All right, guys. Good afternoon. Hope you're having a good week so far. We're on Unit 22 now, Session 1, Unit 22, Session 1, and we're going to really be talking these next 5 weeks really on the authority and the power and the supremacy of Jesus. This passage that we're going to look at today shows Jesus's power over nature or over the creation, which is really cool because we understand that Jesus is our creator. He created everything that is, and when he did ministry here on earth, he demonstrated that because he's creator, because he's Lord over it, the wind and the waves obey him. And so we're going to look at that story in Mark chapter 4 today. A very familiar story to us. It's Mark chapter 4, starting in verse 35 through 41. And it's a great story. So instead of going point by point, I think most of us understand the story, and it's a familiar story to us. It's a pretty simple outline. I'm going to open up just real quick. I'm going to open up that's the wrong button. Open up the curriculum for this week, just so I can make sure we're on the right page. So yeah, the points are: Jesus rests in God's care. Um, Jesus asserts his authority, and Jesus calls his followers to faith. And so pretty simple and straightforward points there. But just something unique I think about this story is, these disciples that have followed him, they're in this boat. They've seen some crazy things already, ministry, and heard his message, and seen miracles and all those things. But in order for them to truly, you know, put their trust in him and put their faith in him, they've got to be convinced that he is, above everything else. They know he's different and they recognize him as Lord, but they've yet to see that in certain instances. And so they see it here in this passage. I think that's part of why Jesus does this, is he demonstrates to his disciples saying, I'm not just a teacher. I'm not just another rabbi. I am King Jesus. I am God. And he does that by calming these the winds and the waves, and saving them. And this wasn't an uncommon thing. Um, there were storms on the Sea of Galilee a lot because the mountains would come through, and the wind would shoot through the valleys of those mountains and cause this great storm on the sea. And so these men were like terrified of, like, they'd heard of storms like this, and this was a really bad storm. And Jesus saves them, and pretty incredible. So just real quick, just want to look at some of the things just in this passage. I'll look at the curriculum real quick just to double check. And so it says Jesus rests in God's care. We see that in verses 35 to 38. And the cool thing about this story is Jesus found himself during the chaos. He was down below praying, and actually the scriptures say here in verse 38, it says he was in the stern asleep on the cushion, and they woke him up and said, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? You see, Jesus wasn't, he was sleeping through this storm, not necessarily because he's like this heavy sleeper, but he was perfectly fine. Like, he knew that they were going to be okay. And you and I look at that and we're like, oh yeah, it's because he's Jesus and he knows everything. But it's ultimately the fact that he rests his understanding in the fact that his power is from God, that he's going to demonstrate his power momentarily, and he doesn't have to worry, right? It's because he knows who's on the throne. And then later on in that passage, he demonstrates his authority. They yell for him. He comes up and he just says, "Peace, be still," and it's over. And then finally, in verses 40 through 41, he calls them even more to following him. He says, "Why are you so afraid and still have no faith?" And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, Who then is this that even the winds and the seas obey him? So, like, Jesus was almost calling them to a greater level of faith. It's like, I don't want you just to follow me, but when we find ourselves in these scary situations, I want you to put your trust in me. I want you to trust that I've got this. And they would have to do a lot of that in their time, especially after Jesus, died on the cross and then rose again. They relied on the Holy Spirit. They relied on his presence in the form of the Holy Spirit. And you see them do great and incredible things in his name. So anyways, I think this story for us just really can bring a lot of peace to us. And it's not just strictly about the fact that he's Lord over nature and creation, but it's just it's solidifying this concept that Jesus is in control of all things, and we can rest easy knowing that. So so yeah, that's our lesson for this week. I hope that helps you as you prepare. Thank you guys. Well, I actually can't end the video. I can't click the little button, so you get a bonus 5 seconds here. All right, there we go. Bye, guys.